Thank you for the invitation and good afternoon. And thank you for the possibility to speak to you after many technical talks on a more or less not so technical level. I will address interconnectivity and digitalization, but not on the technical level. And yesterday evening I was invited by the Austrian Journalist Club for a discussion, and it was very interesting for me to hear the experience from the president of the club, because he told the audience when he became a male about this topic, he thought, oh, another mad guy. But somehow he was interested in the topic and started investigation, and the deeper he went, that he found out that this is not mad topic, and in the final he said it was the most important and interesting investigation in his 40 years of journalism. So I hope I can also give you some new points of view. So the topic will be not on technical level, but more on our social level, because we all depend on these infrastructures. And this is often not so the topic. We speak about IT security, about infrastructure protection, but very less about what it will mean for us as people if these systems fail. So first I would like to start with connectivity leads to complexity, which is not very well known in the outside of this room. We use this word complexity, but what it really means is not often known. And that's not the only thing. It's also complexity leads to systemic risks, and our risk management is not really prepared to deal with this new kind of risks. And systemic risk could lead to major X events or extreme events which are able to change our way of life. We are very depending on these infrastructures, and therefore we make much effort to prevent these events, but there is no 100% security, and therefore we should also think about preparation for X events and not only for prevention of this. But what does complexity mean in concrete? There are many points which I don't like to address at this talk. I only would like to highlight 2 points, and this will be small causes and large effects, butterfly effect also called, and delayed long-term effects, because I think they are also for you very important in the ICT world. Systemic risks are defined as risks with high degree of cross-linking, interdependencies between different systems, and we have no outreach limitation if there is a larger disturbance in the system. We have feedback loops. That means you have no easy cause and source and cause. Then it's also possible that cascading effects are occurring, and the triggers and the effects are systematically underestimated. This is also my experience dealing with this topic since many years, that many responsible people or the leaders in crisis management and emergency service are not aware about these new risks and topics. One topic you will know is Internet of Things. The producers thought or still think ICT security is expensive and needs special personnel, and so they often forget of this necessity. The users say we don't need the security because you need knowledge and it's more expensive, therefore both are in a win-win situation. But what we have overlooked is that criminals are able to collect this unsecure Internet of Things and use them as weapon. And we have seen it last year, and you will know it from the major attacks on Google, Amazon, Netflix, and other players in the US area. But not only there, we have seen them later on also. And the major danger is here that a small cause could lead to major infrastructure collapses. As long as we only can see attacks on data services, it's everything fine. But if they hit a provider where are running major or very important infrastructure services, this could lead to major infrastructure collapses. And we have seen this during the last weeks also in Sweden. There were DDoS attacks. I don't know now if they were driven by only by Internet of Things, but DDoS attacks which caused delays in the railway system because the IT systems went down. And so we see already these impacts, even bigger cascading effects were not seen until now. There's also a study already from 2014 about the systemic risk situation in the cyber sector, and this study stated the way in which the complexity of interconnected risk is assessed is painfully similar to how financial risks were assessed prior to 2008 crash. In the end, it was the very complexity which helped bring the system down. So we can also compare these two systems. You can say, yes, 2014, we have almost 2018, 4 years later, and nothing like that happened. Yes, that's true, but it is not sure if this will also be tomorrow the same. So we should be aware of this situation. The problem is, I think, we are still organized in different silos. In cybersecurity, where police is responsible, cyber defense, where military forces are responsible, then we have also critical infrastructure protection, and every silo is more or less closed up with more connection also to the other side, but we are often not addressing the interconnected risks in the same way. And the problem is, if cybersecurity fails on a big level, this will lead to cascading effects, and there will be no second chance of defense. And therefore, we only will need soldiers for cleaning up the mess and not to make cyber defense. So I think we have to address this topic much more in a holistic way than we do it nowadays. And the other message for you is, if you are in the protection section on enterprise level, you are the most important guys to prevent these things. At the moment, we are also addressing mainly cyber threats, cybercrime activities, and data breaches, which is what we are seeing mostly on daily basis. But I think the danger, or the more danger, is in the infrastructure section again, if these systems are attacked and fail. And we have this seen in the Ukraine 2 years ago, 2015, in the first time when a cyber attack caused a power blackout. And we have seen this also 2016 without the blackout, but experts are sure that this was only a testing of the possibilities. And you know much better than I what's going on in the real world with attacks on enterprise level, on infrastructure level. So protection is not enough. It's important, but it's not enough. We also have to prepare for the worst, that this protection is failing. And I think we have also to rethink our system design, then more of the same will not be the solution. But later on I have some more words to this topic. So the next is, I would like to address the complexity gaps in the power supply system, and especially the possible scenario of a Europe-wide power and infrastructure breakdown, so-called blackout. The problem is that we have a European power supply system. We often, if you read the newspapers, you can read that always every nation is speaking about a national power supply system, which is not true because all these countries are part of the European power supply system, and it works only if every nation is working well and everything is functioning there. One topic we have is we have too big to fail system. You will know this topic from the financial system 10 years ago. We had their banks, or we still have banks, which are too big to fail, and we cannot let them collapse. Therefore, we have to do everything to prevent this. But there is no system which could not collapse, and so this is a dangerous state for the whole system. The next thing is we have unilateral system interventions. Especially we are making the energy transformation to a decentralized production, and this would need also a decentralized control system. But we have a huge centralized power system which was built for huge power plants, and now we are changing the production from thousands of huge power plants to millions of decentralized power plants, and this change is changing the whole characteristic of the system, and we are not really aware about this changing. At the moment, it's still handable for the centralized system, but it gets daily harder to handle this new situation. Then we have the problem that the market and politics are ignoring physics. Especially the energy-only market is addressing not the infrastructure needs to transport power or the electricity from one place to another place. And therefore, the grid gets more and more under stress. The operation is increasing at stress limit. We don't know where is the highest limit, but we can see it since years that the stress limit is increasing. And the new topics we just started, or already a few years ago maybe, but the real broad implementation is still in front of us. These are the smart topics, and especially smart metering, smart grids, smart homes, which also influence the whole power supply system. And the problem is with these changes is that we do this hardly with systemic thinking. Everybody tries his box to optimize and to raise awareness and efficiency, but not have the whole system in focus. So how likely is such a breakdown of the system? The positive news is there is no evidence. Why? Because the last blackout where several countries were involved is 42 years ago, 1976, almost 42 years ago, and so hardly anybody can remember this situation. But there's also a Turkey illusion, which means that the Turkey increases trust in his owner because of his feeding. But he is missing the most important information, that this feeding is only for one purpose, and this is that he will be eaten. And we are acting in a similar way. We are looking back how successful have we been until now, and overlook what is changing around us. And so we could be also overwhelmed on one day because we have not looked to these changings. And so the main question is, or the most important one is, would we be prepared for such an event? How can a blackout be triggered? On a normal base, the operators do a very good job to prevent this collapse, but there are more um, possible triggers, and when they came together on a wrong time, this could lead to this collapse. One possible trigger is, of course, cyber attacks, as we have seen in the Ukraine. But there are also several other triggers. My favorite is system failure. This means complexity overload because to control the whole system. Favorite because there was no intention to bring the system down, and there will be hopefully hardly damages in the infrastructures. If there are damages by a cyber attack or a terrorist attack, it will last much more longer to re-establish the system. So this, the scenario I am showing is the best case. So if the domino effect or the cascading effect starts in the power supply system, it will last several seconds, and most parts of Europe will be dark. But that's not alone. This will trigger then a chain reaction in all other infrastructures, and the most problem I see or fear in the telecommunication sector. Why? Because these structures were built since years or even more, and we have no clue how to restart these infrastructures from zero if they collapse completely. And after several hours or days, they will collapse completely. So if the telecommunication system is not available anymore, the society will fall apart into small structures. And the problem is that if you have no communication, you cannot manage anything, and you cannot make crisis management. And so it will be very difficult to organize something what is not prepared. And at the moment, we are not really prepared. Therefore, we have to self-organize on a local level. Everything else will not really function. So if this happened, we have two major phases. The phase one is the power collapse and also the infrastructure collapse, which will last in Austria around about 1 day, hopefully. In some areas, maybe it will be restored earlier. It could be also that it lasts a little bit longer. We don't know it really. But on a European level, we have to expect several days until the power supply will be restored again. In Germany, there's the message that it will last at least 6 days. And during this restart, there was a rebounds possible because if there are happening some failures, the whole system will collapse again, and we will restart from the beginning. So this will lead to the situation that the telecommunication system will also fail several days after the power supply system is available again. And this means we have no logistics, no goods which can be transported or delivered to the stores. And one of the main problems is we have a very good just-in-time, just-in-process logistics system. So even if we have already a power supply again in Austria, we have many transnational dependencies in these logistic systems. So we will also here see hardly any goods in the stores. So this phase two lasts much more longer. We speak here from weeks and even from months. Think about if you have a mass dying in the animal farms, then you will not get food or meat again in a very short time because you have grown up animals again to have this food supply. One topic which will be also interesting for you is this one, the experience from infrastructure operation. This capacitor, which are also implemented in the power adapters, have the problem that they fail if they are in use for 24 hours, infrastructures, and for a long time. If they are running for years already, there's the experience that up to 30% of these devices die after a power cut. And normally, if this fails locally, we don't notice it because there are enough spare parts. But if we have a huge scenario like a European-wide power blackout, there will be not enough spare parts to replace them, and especially in the telecommunication sector, power adapters are very common. And therefore I fear that we have here in this sector special problems to this topic. Last week or the weekend before last, last week, so on 7 November there was a big problem in Bavaria with Vodafone because of electricity and hardware problem. The police force were not reachable anymore, and also the railway communication system failed. And so these are small examples where we should more aware to the huge topic. The other topic is the water supply and even the wastewater supply, because also in many water supply systems you need pumps, therefore you need electricity, and we will see many regions without water. And even if the water supply is functioning, the whole sewage system is also dependent on power supply, and so we will see there are also major problems after a few hours. And also, of course, the whole logistic dependencies. You everywhere need data, connectivity to synchronize the whole systems, and so this will mean the food supply will fail, and we will see very soon empty shelves, empty shelves in the stores. And even if stores are opening after the power cut, they will get no supply afterwards. This will last until the telecommunication system is functioning again, and then you can start again with food delivering. So we have here a big problem, and there's a study in Austria, fruit preparedness in Austria, which came to the conclusion that about 1/3 of the people, or 3 million people, will run out of food no later than on the 4th day. So this is very soon, and as I stated before, we have to expect that the food supply will not start again within a week. And after 4 days we have already 3 million people which have to less at home. And after 7 days the number is already 2/3 or 6 million people because of this study. So this is our biggest Achilles worse what we have as society. And the question is, how much food do you have at home? Who has more than 1 week stored at home and can look forward to this scenario? Nobody? One? Okay. So you see, it's also important for you, even it's not the technical topic, but if you have nothing to eat, it will not be very comfortable for you. And if you have to do some important job to bring up the system again, it will not be very fun if you are starving. So very important point, even it's not technical. This means also experienced organization will fail because they are also depending on these infrastructures, because they are also in the same situation like you. They are often not so prepared. Also their families are not prepared. And if the family have a problem, they will not come to work and help anybody else. So this is the scenario we should be aware. I get always the question, yeah, how likely is this? I'm sure we will see this scenario within the next 5 years. I'm dealing with this scenario since 6 years, and I saw the escalation and the problems, how they increase, and I'm really sure that we will see this within these 5 years, because also the new problems we will see in the next years. But we can do something that's important. We often behave like this bird and put the head in the sand, but the problem will not disappear. Therefore, we have to rethink the whole topic. I think the first important step is knowledge. So you will now know much more than many people outside of this room, because they never have heard about the possibility of this scenario and what it will mean. And if you know what could happen, you will not be so stressed than everybody else who has no clue what's going on. But that alone is, of course, too less. It's only the start for action, and we have to do something. And the first and most important point is, how are you personally prepared for it? And as we saw just before, there's possibility to improve this preparation. The question is also how the knowledge in your family. Think about it happens now, how you will come home, what will you do, what will do your family? Have there something to eat? How you bring your family together again? And if you have spoken about this topic before, it will be possible to reduce the stress in the situation. Because if you cannot phone them anymore, they will be very stressy. The other thing is the ability of self, the help of yourself, the self-storage. Increase your personal preparation for at least 1 week, better for 2 weeks, to be able not to go to the shop to buy new food. And the third step is what's with your co-workers, with your employees and their families. Are they better prepared or not? Because if they are not prepared, they will not be available to help you or your organization. And one thing is we have to reduce illusions of safety and security. And I think you will know this very good, how much security we have in the systems and how vulnerable are these systems. And I think we should reduce this illusion. So what we else can do is learning from nature, because nature has a long, very long experience. And one topic in nature is functioning is small is beautiful, not make systems too big, because small structures are much more flexible and robust against strokes. And it's of course a meta topic, but it's a way to bring in this robustness we need for robust structures. The other 3 points which are very important for a viable system design is, or the first point is reduce energy and resources consumption and simplicity. And this is also for software. We have to reduce the complexity of software to get the chance to overlook the whole topic and reduce the vulnerabilities, especially in infrastructure systems. Of course, office systems, they must be cheap, and if they fail, it's not so important, but in infrastructure systems, we should much more focus on this topic. Other topic is a complex system you cannot control by centralized control mechanism. This will not function. Of course it does. We see it nowadays, but there will be a point when it's not anymore possible, and therefore it's better to decentralize, make autonomous structures, systems that are working together but have their fallback scenario. And the third below is error-friendly, error tolerance, and we should stop patching humans. That never will function, but we still do it. But humans are complex systems and you cannot change their behavior. We have to look and address this topic and include this in our thinking and also in software production. One possibility in the energy sector would be to build an energy cell system, because then the whole system will not fail in a very short time. And if you have a failure in one cell, you can stop the spread and very fast rebuild the cell function. So this will need also system thinking and action. This means, yeah, we have to sit together, not experts on the same level, but also with other experts to get a clue what we are doing and also how we can build better solutions. And therefore it will also need to change our way of thinking and dealing with unsecurity, because security and risk-driven we saw until now it is not really very successful. Of course it is successful, but it's always a weapon race which will not be won by us. And therefore we should focus on more on robustness and resilience, independent of the scenario, because it's not important if the power system fails by a cyber attack, by complexity gap, or by extreme weather conditions. And so I think we could use this approach also in the ICT sector. Or we should go in this direction and develop new solutions. One major problem is at the moment, I think, especially in the economy, thinking that we are focusing mostly on efficiency, but too less on effectiveness. So we should more think about doing the right things and not only doing things right. And this also because efficiency and robustness and resilience are in opposite, because robustness means you need reserves, redundancy, and this is dead capital, and especially in the business sector, hardly anybody is interested to spend too much money for these things. So I would like to come to my conclusions. The benefits and risks are very close together, and the question is, are we mature enough to go this path? And are we enough aware about the situation we are in, and how can we reduce these dependencies and our society reliance on the systems? Critical infrastructure protection and cybersecurity are very important, of course, but I think we need also a protection from critical infrastructures. We should reduce these dependencies. We need also robust infrastructures and resilient people to cope with these new challenges. Then it's not all about technique, it's about us, because we are depending on these structures. And therefore I would like to finish my talk with a quote from Albert Einstein: "We cannot solve our problem with the same thinking we used when we created them." And I hope I was able to give you some additional thoughts to this topic, to the topic of security and insecurity we are facing on a daily basis. Thank you.
So we have room for questions. Are there any? Yes.
So you were talking about which problems a society runs into after a blackout for multiple days.
Yeah.
Have you already looked at Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria? They lost the whole power supply, and they, for most parts of the island, they haven't still restored it after almost 2 months. And I think it would be a very interesting case study to find out how the society works or deals with such a long blackout and wiping out the whole of infrastructure.
Completely true, and it's on my to-do list. I don't believe that there are many reports already, but be aware, it's a small island with more than 3 million people, I think. Small relatively, of course. But if you think if we have affected several 100 million people and the area all over Europe, it will have completely different effects. That's the one point. The other point is also in the USA, we have seen blackouts, also in New York, 2012, the last one, and nothing broke down completely. That's true. But these areas are prepared much better than we in Middle Europe, because they are facing much more problems on a daily basis in the power supply system, and they have structures and fallback levers to cope with this topic. And the problem here in Middle Europe is that we have not these fallback scenarios on preparations. And so it could be dangerous to focus only on these countries. In Puerto Rico, the problem was already before that they have a very bad power supply system, and so people were used to come out with power supply or with bad power supply. But even, of course, it will be very interesting to look what is going on there. And the other thing is also, even not so small or a smaller island as you see it, it's still possible to bring in help from outside. If you have affected whole Europe or almost whole Europe, you will not be able to bring in some support. And we have this seen also 3 years or almost 4 years ago in Slovenia, when the ice rain broke down the whole infrastructure. Also there was the possibility to bring in emergency services and to help them.
Any further questions?
Did you look into the problem of our emergency services depending even more on this infrastructure? So I think 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we had sirens on the roofs for calling in fire department or emergency services, and we stripped all that down because now we have all these fancy SMS text message services. As far as I know, all these mobile phone cells go down after at least a few hours because there's minutes, because there's just a normal uninterruptible power supply that maybe delivers power for 10 minutes or something like that.
You are from Germany?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, in Germany the whole siren system was dropped. In Austria we have the luck we still have all over the siren system, but in most parts of Austria it will not function because power supply without in Vienna it will be possible because they have a backup power supply, because they are digital systems. So these systems will fail too. The telecommunication system will fail as a mobiles within minutes because microcells are not backed up, and so everything else will go to the base station, and they have up to 2, maybe 3 hours batteries. But if everybody is connecting to the base station, it will fail soon. We see this always on local-based power cuts, that the telecommunication system is failing very soon. And if it's really huge, it will fail sooner. So this will also not function. In Austria, we have a digital emergency service radio service, which should function up to 24 hours. In Germany, it's up 2 to 4 hours, so much less. But also, you cannot make the whole traffic over this system, and you cannot organize everything about over this system, especially if you do it with speech. So also, emergency service will fail very soon. Yes, and the main message is we have to self-organize on local level and not wait that somebody will come and help us. This will not work.
So, do we have further questions? Then thank you, Herbert. Oh, no, back
Last.
where? Ah,
Last.
last row. Sorry for that.
Do you think we're less prepared for a nuclear attack than we were during the Cold War? Because it doesn't seem, I mean, we talk about nuclear threats, but we don't really, it's not really ingrained in our psyche that that's ever something that's going to happen. But if it did, it seems like it could start triggering some of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, we have very many vulnerabilities in our infrastructures that we have not to talk about a military confrontation or something like this, because it would be very easy to switch off us. And if we try to engage somewhere military with an opportunist who is able to switch off us, the conflict will be very soon closed up. Yeah. So I think before we think about military options, we should start to make our infrastructures robust. Everything else will senseless. I hope I got your question.
You want to add something?
Yeah, of course.
No, I was just, I guess I just heard basically that we have lots of threats of potential nuclear disaster, but we're not really preparing for them.
Yeah. Because everything is still functioning, and as long as it's functioning, most decision makers think it's functioning, and it's unpopular, it costs something, and so on and so on, and so therefore we wait until it's too late. That's the problem, yes. I was last week also in Germany on an event, and it was about what we can do, make decentralized or cells. And the main message was, yes, we know how to do it, but it's not ready to be paid, and therefore we wait until somebody will pay for it. And I said, we know what is standing, what it would mean if it happens, and we cannot wait. We have to act now. But market says no, it's not the topic at the moment.
So, more questions? No? Then thank you, Herbert.
You're welcome.